All right. I'm here with Alexis Sikorsky, and he is the co-founder at KnightScale. How's it going, Alexis?
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me. It's going really well. Thank you.
Good, good. So before we get to kind of what you're working on now and some tactical tips, let's talk about your background. How did you get started?
Okay, short version, and I'll tell you more if you ask more, but really short version. Started a company in 2000, um, a bespoke development company on internet. 2003, I acquired a banking software product, electronic document management system. Grew the company pretty successfully from 2000 to 2008, where at that point we are like 10, 11 million revenue, super profitable. I feel at that point that I'm so smart and so invulnerable and nothing wrong can happen, right? Especially in 2008 when you are a banking software company. Um, so in one day, lost 75% of my revenue, basically, and then goes through the years that I call the grind, like 2008 to 2013, 14, like having to fire 75% of the company, like fighting bankruptcy pretty much every month, having to mortgage my house and like every month asking yourself, like, is it like, are you in good money chasing bad money situation? Should you fold, etc.? But I am, as I'm stubborn and also have no other choices, managed to, let's say, go back to profitability in 2014. That's a pretty optimistic view, but let's say almost on the way to back to break even. And that's when I got a call from a private equity. Well, you're an entrepreneur and your listeners are entrepreneurs, so you know you get these phone calls every week and they never lead to anything because you don't pick up the phone or like you're too busy. This one, for some reason, I was working with my brother at that time. Told me, you know what, they are French, they know your culture. They started their private equity after they sold their software company. So they know your market, they know your universe. Okay, pick up the phone. They came to visit me and been super honest with them, like as you should. Told them, listen, I'm exhausted because I was like literally 14 years in the grind, working 16 hours a day, and exhaustion is a big issue for bootstrap founder-led companies after a while. And I told them, listen, I'd be very interested to sell, but not now because now my company is worth zero because it's not profitable. But I'll make you a deal if you come in 2 years when I'm back to profitability, and I'll be good in 2 years. I won't even go through an auction process. Like, make me in 2 years, you make me a decent offer and I'll sell to you. And they say, yeah, thanks for the offer, but that's not what we're going to do. We're going to do something slightly different. You're going to go home, you're going to do a business plan, and we come back next week. So, okay, I made my business plan. How can I call it? Like, very optimistic business plan. Very, very optimistic. And they come the next week and say, okay, perfect. We're buying your company now. We're buying it 11 times the EBITDA in your business plan in 2 years, and we're going to pay you 85% cash and 15% earnout.
Wow.
And at that point, I start calling my friends to ask which one was doing a practical joke on me. But that was actually the offer. Obviously, it was too good to refuse. I accepted the offer. And long story short, 2 years later, I ended up making more money with the earnout that I was with the 85% cash.
Mm.
So that's like remain CEO till 2019. 2019, new life, new wife, new country. It was time for me to move on. In the meantime, we acquired a very big company, like almost twice our size. And this company was a CEO that was obviously better than me. So I went to see the private equity. I said, guys, this guy should be CEO and not head of sales. Put him CEO, make me chairman. I stayed chairman for a year, and then I asked them to buy back my shares, which they did very, very high valuation. They'll be super honest. So that brings us to 2020, and then 2021, 2022. I started an executive MBA at Oxford. And in that MBA, I started meeting lots of entrepreneurs, right? And I was talking to them. I was like, shit, they're making the exact same mistake I made at the beginning. Then I did a little mental exercise, which is interesting. And I was like, okay, let's do the mental exercise of if I was starting New Access now instead of 20 years ago, what would have I done differently? And basically, I calculated the total sum of my mistake to be 50 million in 5 years. Like if I knew at the beginning what I know now, I would sell 50 million more and 5 years earlier, which is not the end of the world. It's not like depressing, but it's interesting. So I started talking to entrepreneur and like, yeah, so I can help you save 50 million in 5 years pretty much. And starting to do advisory and wrote the book about cashing out, exiting your company, like basic steps to grow and exit your company. And I realized that lots of founders are stuck pretty much at the exact same point. They stuck where their company reached somewhere between 5 and 10 million revenue, profitable, everything goes well, but they struggle how to grow out of that like ditch or plateau or whatever you call it. And that's where now I focus my energy.
Nice.
Sorry, was that way too long or
No,
just a bit too long?
no, it was great. It was great. So when it came to, I think what would be fun to talk about is preparedness, like how to prepare for an exit, because 2008, quite the setback, all the way back to break even. This PE firm calls you. What were some of the things that you quickly did? Like you put together that business plan and they said 85% upfront, 15% earnout. What were some things that you had to put together to prepare the business, or had you been preparing before that for something like a
So two different questions. What did I do or what should I have been doing? Completely different question. What did I do was basically nothing. I had one thing that was playing in my favor. It's because I'm a bit of a nerd and and my brother is totally anal retentive. We had good financials. We had good numbers. We had, well, good, not great, but at least decent monthly reporting, which is extremely unusual for a company that size. And I'm always so surprised how bad founders are with numbers. So that played in my favor. But then all the stuff I should have done, which is calculate a nominal EBITDA, auctioning the private equity, due diligence of the private equity, getting your company ready, what I call dressing the bride, which is making your company sexy and attractive for private equity. I didn't do any of that. I just got extraordinarily lucky on the private equity.
Got it. And I guess in terms of like timing is crucial. And I think I'll just leave it open ended to that. Like, when is the right time for somebody to sell?
So, two different questions. When is the right time to sell, and when is the right time to prepare to sell? Right? It's two different questions. When is the right time to sell? It's one point in time. It's when the valuation of the company reach the number you're comfortable with. And the number you're comfortable with, I mean the number where when that money hit your bank account, you don't have to work another day in your life if you don't want to. You will die without touching the capital. Your kids have a roof on their head. You have the lifestyle you want to have from now to the end of your life, which means you're a situation where you can live on the interest of your asset. basically, to make it super simple. And that number is roughly like everybody think, oh, it's a very different number for everybody. It's actually not that different. The number is basically 40 million. When you reach 40 million, that means basically, I mean 40 million for you, depending on how your cap table is. So 40 million for you means like basically you'll make 5% per year, which means you'll make 2 million, which means the taxman will take half of that and you'll have a lifestyle of 1 million per year, which is a good and comfortable lifestyle for our founders. We're not talking super yacht on private planes, but we're talking a nice house, a nice secondary house, education paid for you kids, your medical bills are paid, and it's a good and decent lifetime. So to answer your question is when should you sell is when your share of the company reached at least 40 million of valuation.
Got it. I like that. Very specific number, backing into the getting to $1 million a year for covering the
Getting to $1 million a year, I think it's a good then if you I talk to a lot of founders who want more, who want the mega yacht and the private plane, but then it's relatively easy to get to 100 million valuation. If you think about it, basically you need to get to 10 million EBITDA, which you get to 40 million revenue. It's not the end of the world. Lots of company can get to there. Get more than that, then it becomes tricky for many reasons. First of all, you need to have something special in your company to get to 500 million valuation, right? You have tons of company at 100 million, 500 million, you need to be a leader in your field. You need to be in a field that is fast growing. It's trickier. Not all founders get to that. I know I didn't, and I never will, because I don't have the skills. I know I'll never if somebody comes to see me and say, I want to reach $1 billion valuation, I say, good luck. It's fantastic. I'm not your guy. I just don't have this skill set. It's a totally different skill set. You need then to be able to work with investment banks, and you need to deal a lot with capital and stuff like that, which is not my specialty.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned before about, what you did do and what you should have done when it comes to the PE firm. What tips could you share for people listening about red flags? Let's say a PE firm, we all know that they're calling and doing cold outreach in the inbox every day to operators out there. What are some red flags that you've seen and you've heard of founders that have kind of talked to or proceeded with private equity firms that weren't necessarily good ones?
Okay, very simple. First one, number one is we are a private equity, but we're not going to tell you who we are. You hang up. Private equity do not operate stealth. They tell you, they say, we are X and X private equity. We're interested in your company. If they are anywhere, if it quacks like a duck, if it smells dodgy, it probably is. Mm-hmm. Also, if it's too good to be true, the valuation of your company, or at least you should to the million, you should know the valuation of your company. If they offer double your valuation, nah. It's dodgy. So that's the basic stuff. But anyway, do not go even to a letter of intent before you do your due diligence on the private equity. And I'm going to tell you how to do a due diligence on private equity, because it's the easiest thing to do in the entire world. And I don't understand why nobody does it. It's crazy to me that the people don't do it. First of all, you tell them you're going to do a private equity. They're going to do 6 months of private equity to your company, which I call the 6 months colonoscopy. It's not going to be pleasant. You're not going to enjoy it. It's going to be painful. So the least you can do is do due diligence on them. So you tell them, thank you for being interested. We're going to talk again in 2 weeks. In the meantime, I'm going to do a due diligence on your private equity. And the way you do it is very simple. You tell them, okay, what's interesting to me is, first of all, do you tell the truth about your process? And two, do you actually treat the founders you acquire well? First one is, a client of mine used this expression, which I think fantastic. Some of private equity do. It's called fish and chip. So they fish you with a high valuation and then they chip at it during the due diligence. It's extremely efficient because we're human beings. So you go through 6 months of due diligence, 6 months colonoscopy, you're exhausted, you don't work on your company anymore, you work on the due diligence. And in your mind, or if you're an idiot like me, in real life, you start spending the money, right? You have a letter of intent that say 80 million, you start spending the 80 million. So when they get to the, getting to the close of the deal, they say, yeah, we find stuff we didn't like in your due diligence, not going to be 80, it's going to be 70. And there's good chance if they're going to do that to you, they did that previously. So what you do is you tell them, listen, I need to call 5 people you acquired and have a conversation with them. Can you please give me 5 contacts? So they will give you very easily 5 contacts. Obviously, you're not going to call these people. It's the 5 people you're not calling. You get on their websites. They will tell you who they acquired. You find all the other ones on LinkedIn. You call them and you ask them, did they fish and chip you? And after the acquisition, did they treat you well? Did they did what they said, etc. And that's how you do your due diligence.
I love that, the fish and chip, and that's such an accurate representation.
I wish I found that name. It's such a good name, especially in Britain. But I cannot take credit. It's one of my clients. That name so for me. Good. Such a good name.
And it gets to the point too. This has been brought up many times on this podcast. Of by that 5th and 6th month of the analogy you gave of colonoscopy, you get to a point where you're getting devalued so much with the fish and chip model that you all of a sudden get into this headspace where you're like, you know what? Yeah, thank you for just taking this from me. It's like a psychological.
Keep in mind, that's these guys' job, acquiring company. It's not yours selling your company. That's why, by the way, whether it's me or somebody else, you need advisor at that phase. You need people who speak private equity. You notice when you talk to private equity, they use so much jargon to make you feel that what they do is so complicated. Private equity is the simplest model in the entire world. You cannot think of something simpler than private equity, but they make it sound so complicated. They talk about ROI, bridge loan, mezzanine. They make it so complicated. And they do that on purpose. To be honest, the whole finance world does that. When you talk to a banker, you feel like, oh my God, this job is so complicated. So you need people who can speak private equity. And also there's ton of things you can do to increase the valuation of your company, but literally tons of things you can do.
Excellent. And that's actually a good segue into valuation. So what are just some high level things that people could do that are listening to increase the value of their business? I know one of the ones that comes up often is transferability. Like if it's attached to you as an individual that's growing the business, or on social media, that's a big thing now, where I'm an influencer, let's say, and my business is attached to my brand only. That's not really as transferable. So what are some things that you've seen work to drive that valuation?
Well, if you've been working with me for a while before you sell your company, you'll be out of that already, because it's the key thing, not only for the valuation of your company, but also for growth, right? If you become the bottleneck, and I send all my clients a little exercise at the very beginning of our collaboration. I say, you're going to go on a mental exercise, and then I ask them to do it in real life. You go in a deserted island with no phone for 2 weeks. What happens to your company? If the company tanks, then you don't have a company, you have a job, right? And your company is not sellable. That's very, very common, and that needs to be fixed. But that's not something to increase your valuation. It's something to make your company sellable. If you're not to that point, your company is worth 0. That's simple. I don't care what's your EBITDA and what's your revenue, and you can be the sexiest company in the world. It's a very big question. Can you buy OpenAI without Sam Altman? It's a real question, and they tried and it didn't work. So now is OpenAI has any kind of valuation, or is it completely linked to Sam Altman? If it is, then it was 0. So that's really the stuff you have to fix before. But the thing you can do to actually improve your valuation, it's a little bit technical, but it's not that complicated. you have an EBITDA, right? That's how you value your company. It's a multiple of the EBITDA, and then the multiple depend on geography, market, size. Size matter, like in all things, size really do matter. And market matters. If you are a construction company, your multiple is not the same if you're an AI company. And that there's not much you can do about. But there's one thing you can do about. It's actually the private equity will not use your EBITDA. They will say they will use your EBITDA, but they will use something that they internally call a nominal EBITDA, which is the EBITDA cleaned up of all the stuff that you send that are not strictly necessary. For example, they will check very, very carefully the salary of management, see if they have cost saving. And let's say you pay your cousin who's your CFO, but he's actually a bona fide accountant. I think lots of people will relate to that. And you pay him 200,000 per year. They say, okay, this is 200,000 I can save. So your EBITDA suddenly is 200,000 higher, etc. They will also remove everything from the EBITDA, which is not a recurring cost. Like you have somebody you fired in November, he's still like 10 months in your EBITDA, they'll take that out of your EBITDA, etc., etc., etc. So your nominal EBITDA is more than your EBITDA. And that's one of the way they actually make a profit is they know stuff you don't. They know your valuation better than you do. And you have tons, that's just an example, but there's tons of ways you can dress the bride.
Well said. I like that. Nominal EBITDA. I have heard that before, but that was described very well of non-recurring costs. The employee one, like former employees. I haven't heard of that one before where they go in and remove if somebody left in Q1, they'll remove that and adjust it. That's good. I like that. And with mistakes, my favorite, my favorite topic, not necessarily that you've made. It can be, but what are some of the...
I made them all, Steve. So if I missed a mistake, it's really by luck.
So what are some of the mistakes?
Big mistake is come unprepared, because they won't. They'll be very, very well prepared. At the end of the day, it's a negotiation. At the end of the day, at the end of the deal, your goals align. So that's something you need to understand. Now you're not the owner, you're a shareholder. So your interests align with private equity. Big mistake is, there's so many. Thinking you can, how do you say in English, have your cake and eat it? Like you're selling your company and you're like, ooh, I'm worried. If I sell the company, I will lose control. No, don't worry. You will lose control. You sold your company. It's not yours anymore. You're an employee now. So that's something like I drill my clients very much about it. Like if you want to keep control, then you don't sell. You cannot have it both ways. Like you, so that yes, you're going to lose control. And that's why you need to have lots of conversation with the private equity in terms of autonomy. What's your autonomy? And what autonomy do you desire? And do they match? If you want full control on recruitment, for example, very common. Oh, I want to be able to hire whoever I want. Screw you. They'll never give you that. It's that simple because it's how they protect themselves, right? They usually will give you a lot of autonomy tactically, a little less strategically, because your goal align with one difference. You can stay in that company for 20 years and grow it for 20 years. They can't. They have to be out in 5 years, 5, 6 years max. So everything you do that shows profit in more than 5 years, they won't go for it. Which, by the way, I think it's a little bit ridiculous because everything that's more than 4 years in terms of plan is guessing. It's not planning, but that's a different question. Not doing your due diligence, it's a major mistake. And also, people are scared of private equity For some reason, they're scared. Private equity are pretty much good at everything except communicating what they're doing. Private equity, most of them are actually good people, as long as you understand how they operate. Lots of misunderstanding comes from like, oh, it's not my company, it's my family. So I want to be sure they're not going to fire my people. No, they will fire you people. Like whenever they want, however they want, they don't care. As a founder, you're in the business of making money, but you also see most of us see our job with some kind of social element, one way or another. Probably maybe a little more in Europe than in the US, but you always have these things like, okay, I'm doing a cool thing. I'm helping families. I'm providing. It's like they don't give a flying F about that, the private equity. Your company is an Excel spreadsheet. Mm-hmm. You need to be comfortable with that.
Well said. Well said. Well said. So that takes us to the finale. Knowing what you know now. I think you briefly mentioned this before, but knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself 10 years ago?
Get better numbers, number one. Fire myself of the company earlier, what I call fire myself out of the company. Lots of founders do one mistake, and God knows I did this one, is confusing what's urgent with what's important. Or said another way, spending more time in the company than on the company. That's a huge mistake. And that's roughly 100% of founders make that mistake. It's understandable, and it's the way it has to be at the beginning. But there is a point when you need to switch from being CEO, CTO, head of sales, customer support to being the CEO. And that's a process. It doesn't happen like on its own. That was, I'd say, my biggest mistake. Get ready and get good people earlier than you think. Like get C-level people earlier than you think. And have a plan. Have a plan and execute the plan. When you have a plan, everything gets easy. Do M&A earlier than you think, way earlier than you think. People are scared of M&A. I was never. That's the one mistake I didn't make. I did 4 major M&A acquisition in the life of my company, and they were all good ideas. Even the one that was really bad, still it was a good idea to do it because I learned so much and I didn't lose that much money.
I like that. Do M&A earlier on. Well, that's the last question I have, other than what are you working on now and where can people learn more?
So real quick, so these people are stuck in that plateau, like 5 to 10 million revenue. Lots of companies are at that stage. They reach to 5-10 million revenue, profitable, and they struggle to grow. 3 reasons that I all touch on briefly. They are exhausted. They are in the company, not on the company. They don't have the right numbers, and they are in a point that I think it's very important. It's a step where you need C-level people, but you cannot afford C-level people. And that's a kind of a catch-22. And the way I solved that is basically I called all my friends. I said, hey, all the guys have been working, like the COO of one of my biggest clients, my former head of sales, my former CFO, like all these guys say, hey, like you're either retired or you hate your job. Let's have fun and go help companies that were where we were 15 years ago to grow. And because you need these people, but you don't need them full time. So what we do now is we build teams, things like Navy SEALs of companies. We bring whatever the client needs. Usually it starts with a CFO because there's not much we can do if we don't know the numbers. So we usually send a CFO as a scout. Then he comes back and say, okay, he needs a CTO, he needs a COO, he needs a head of HR. They all need a head of HR. And I build a team, sales. They all need good salespeople. Build a team leader. We send them in, quick out, my specialty. And we help them grow from there. That's what we do.
Cool. I like that. I like that. It's a great name too, KnightScale.
Thank you.
So where can people learn more about it?
KnightScalePartners.com. Find me on LinkedIn. Have a good things working for me is I have a weird name, so I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. I'm not like Paul Smith, so I'm easy to find. No
Amazing.
excuse not finding me.
Amazing. Well, wherever you guys are listening on iTunes or Spotify, the links that Alexis mentioned will be in the show notes. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your wisdom.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.